basic theology as of the capacity of the blood, I mean, the amount of blood maintained in the body, which can really upset the circulations, if particularly if it is lost. So, meron tayong hemorrhagic anemia, hemorrhagic or blood loss anemia. So, dito we have to, I think it was mentioned, no, previously, that we have the acute and chronic. What differentiate the two is the time, okay, yung transit time of the blood loss. Okay, so we have these specific conditions that might reflect to hemorrhagic anemia, and of course, those conditions that can be under the chronic hemorrhage causing blood loss anemia. What you need to understand here is you can at least have an idea why is it acute or why is it chronic. So last time I have mentioned about that. And then of course, one of the indicators, okay, for acute and chronic, particularly when you do laboratory examination, is the clotting test. Okay, your thrombocytopenia. So thrombocytopenia, sa TAU network ako. Thank you, sir. Okay, so the indicators for acute hemorrhage or the blood loss is thrombocytopenia. So that means there is a decrease in the platelet. Okay, so the platelet volume in the body. And that can also be reflected when you do clotting tests. Okay, the abnormalities in clotting test. So marami yan, no? So another differences is in acute, you have a direct evidence of hemorrhage. So makikita mo talaga, okay, malaki yung blood that can be expelled out or excreted out from the body, which could lead to shock. Okay, so that can lead to a blood loss anemia, not necessarily my problem on the blood. Okay, but definitely the volume of blood has been lost. So there's a great aspect of reduced oxygenations of the tissues. Okay, and now there's the chronic blood loss. Now, what makes it different, okay, sa acute is that the hypovolemia, okay, that the term hypovolemia is very reflected in the acute hemorrhage. Okay, the volume kasi is hypovolemia. But in chronic blood loss, there is no direct, okay, visual characterizations of hypovolemia because it develops little by little. That depends on the cause. So, meron tayong mga parasitisms, etc. Okay, may mga small gastrointestinal neoplasms that alter. Okay, that could cause hemorrhage, no, but not necessarily in big amount of blood that can be spelled out in the body. So, hindi mo siya makita. The volume of blood is listening, I mean, nagle-lessen little by little, not unlike your acute hemorrhage. So, hematocrit, okay, through PCV examinations, the packed cell volume through PCV, you can see there, they reduce in values. Okay, and consequently, that might really reflect to a blood loss anemia is the depletion of iron stores. Now, those acute hemorrhage, since the volume of blood is being discussed here or being the focus in the acute hemorrhage, there is not necessarily depletion of iron source, not unlike the chronic blood loss. What happened here is that the body is still compensating to that little by little reduction of blood volume, but then again, with that compensatory mechanism, the iron stores can be depleted. And if there is a depleted iron store, you know that this iron is a micronutrient, okay, that helps to facilitate in the development of RBC at the same time hemoglobin. Now, kung kulang yung iron store, so if there is lacking in the iron in the body, in the ferrous side or yung ferrous form, operated in the development of RBC at the same time hemoglobin, no, then it will result into impaired erythropoiesis. The impairment depends on the extent of the depletion of iron stores. Now, if you're going to ask, Doc, will it be possible that this could lead to other form or other etiologies of anemia? Yes, it could be. Just what I told you last meeting, these different etiology based anemia, no, it can overlap. Okay. I am just, it was just identified for you to know the first, parang primary cause of that kind of anemia. But then again, this can be overlapped. Okay, so definitely all of that can be a picture of an anemia. Clear? So this is from acute and chronic blood loss. Okay, now another type of anemia is hemolytic anemia. From the term itself, the word element hemolytic, so it's a hemolysis. There is a hemolysis of, as indicated here, it has, the condition is an excessive destruction. There's an excessive destruction of RBC. Okay, we are talking about here yung mga less mature or yung mga premature, but definitely this is seen on the mature one in the circulations. That could lead to a shortened erythrocyte lifespan. So I've mentioned earlier in our discussions that uh, our mature erythrocyte has their lifespan, and this differ or varies in different species. Okay, so kaya nga sabi ko, you review, no, your histology with regards to the species of animals and the different blood cells with their lifespan. So we have a reference value in there. You can read Merck Veterinary Manual, domestic physiology of domestic animals by, I forgot the ano, di ko alam kung sino na yung author, no. So they are actually incorporated, and if you have your Baylor's, I think it's also incorporated at the back. Okay, yung mga normal values. Okay. So another is that identification of the mechanism of destruction and location of the hemolysis is the best approach. Why? By knowing, okay, the site where the hemolysis of RBC is being conducted, no, you can have your management, or you can intervene, or you can have something to stop or control that hemolysis. Well, that depends on the kind of conditions that cause the hemolysis. If it is, let's say, an external cause, so pwedeng chemicals, or let's say mga pathogens that could cause hemolysis of RBC, that you can prevent. Okay. However, one of a little more difficult to control is those intrinsic causes of hemolysis, especially if it is mga inherited, or there are mga X-linked problem or genetic problems. Yun lang yung medyo mahirap, okay, to control. But then, if you know this genetic problem in terms of hemolysis of RBC, you can, you might have, or the doctor or someone can have this reference where it can prevent you to be more prone or to be more exposed to a possible conditions triggering, okay, the lethal genes that cause the hemolysis. So, ibig sabihin parang you can minimize, or I mean, parang kung kaya niyang maging dormant, the genes for hemolysis, then it could be. But definitely, if you are carrying the gene, which for mga erythrocyte or for erythrocytolysis, just like that, erythrolysis, no, especially sa mga pig, meron silang ganyan, no. Okay? So, yun yung mahirap. Kasi it will disrupt. So, if that happens in human kasi, there are mga management, okay, that are being given. So, pwede meron silang mga binibigay na mga drugs, or meron silang mga yun, pag masyado ng grabe mga transfusions na ginagawa nila. Okay, so yun yung mga tatandaan, specifically knowing the cause of the hemolysis. So that either an intravascular hemolysis or an extravascular hemolysis. Now, let's see what's the different, or the characteristic that differentiate the two, okay, hemolysis. Oh, by the way, the picture here shows you the normal way of, I told you last meeting, no, yung isang pictures that I presented are more of circular RBC. If you can see this parang globular circular RBCs that are called spherocytes, and these spherocytes are more of those sphere shape that has been parang recirculated in the circulations as for parang help in the maintenance or help in the compensating condition of the body for RBC or for oxygenation. Yan. So may chances are na pwede silang i-recirculate from the reticuloendothelial tissues. But definitely, this spherocytes is already an abnormal in terms of the shape. Okay, kasi ito na yung mga old, yung mga senile cells na to, nagkaroon siya ng spherocyte picture because, or spherocyte shape because in the spleen, ito na yung parang tagging. Okay, parang ito yung mangyayari sa kanya kasi this is the foam where macrophages can be encouraged to be eaten by, okay, to eat, okay, this cell for disruptions upon reaching its lifespan. So ganito yun. Kasi ang macrophage to prevent an autoimmunity or anything that disrupt the conditions of the disruptions of a particular cell, okay, via certain immune cells, dapat meron tayong mga tagging or may mga signaling. Hindi basta-basta kinakain yan. Kasi kung kinakain basta-basta without any signaling, that might lead to autoimmunity. So dito, nagkakaroon siya ng changes in the cell membrane that might create a picture for the macrophage, okay, to approach this cell and then destroy it afterwards. So ganun yung gusto niya sabihin. Kaya nga, once macrophage meet a normal RBC the circulations, wala naman siyang ginagawa. Unless it is deformed or it has pathogens in it, but anything that is deformed or abnormal in shape, that the macrophage can be activated and engulf these abnormalities. Okay? So, ganun lang nangyayari dyan. Okay, the differences between intravascular and extravascular. Intravascular from the term intra, so inside, no? So, the destruction is within the blood vessels. So, sabihin, pag nasa vein, ayan, so nandoon, sa circulations within the blood vessels. The clinical picture that will give a distinction for intravascular hemolysis are hemoglobinemia and hemoglobinuria. Kasi doon naliliberate. Okay, it will liberate the constituent of the RBC. So what are those constituents that can be liberated from destruction of RBC? Can you give me one? So in normal, let's say, balik tayo sa physio. In normal destruction of RBC, what are the components of RBC being released once degraded in the spleen? Can anyone tell me? Can you still remember your physiology? With regards to destruction of senile erythrocyte. Anyone? Sabi nga.
Bilirubin po ba, Dok?
Bilirubin. Okay, that's one byproduct. Bilirubin. Bilirubin from where? Actually, the bilirubin itself is the pigment na. Okay. From, saan ang galing si pigment bilirubin? I don't know if your teacher then, sa amin kasi pinatrace sa amin yan, pina-exam sa amin yan dati. From RBC destruction to this, to that, hanggang dun sa production of bilirubin. Okay, so can you still remember? Ano pa aside from the pigment produced? Ano yung unang, pag nawasak si RBC, so once RBC is destroyed, ano yung unang maliliberate? Ano yung mga possible byproducts? Definitely what? Oh, yung pinaka-common. Yung kotse, meron siyang sakay. Nabasag si kotse. Ano yung pwedeng lumabas? Siyempre, yung sakay niya. Ano yung sakay? Pwedeng masira, may kasama siya. Ano yon? Ano ulit ang major role ng erythrocyte? What is the major role of erythrocyte?
To deliver oxygen and nutrients to the body.
To deliver oxygen and nutrients at the same time, collect waste product, no? Okay, via what? What is that other component of erythrocytes or within the erythrocytes that helps in the oxygenation, delivery of oxygen? Remember, the erythrocyte is only transporter. Ano yung constituent? Yes, it's
Hemoglobin
your
po ba, Dok?
hemoglobin. That's why once RBC is destroyed, hemoglobin can be what? Liberated. And the hemoglobin is still a compound. It is, again, a compound molecules. Malaki pa rin siya. I think, in terms of protein, siya pa yung pinakamalaki. Ano kasing tawag mo doon? Yung fourth type dun sa protein. I forgot the term, no? Doon sa biochem ko, nakalimutan ko na. So, marami pa siya. So, para siyang polypeptide change pa, marami pa, pwede pa yung ma-destroy. So since nandun lang tayo sa disruption, so after erythrocytes being destroyed, hemoglobin is liberated, and the hemoglobin can be disrupted again into, paghiwalayin mo, ano pa yung component ng hemoglobin? Oh, sige. Pag di nyo naintindihan yan, di nyo maintindihan ang mga uh, manifestations later sa cardiovascular and digestive system, particularly icterus. Dito meron na rin dito. O ano? Ano ba? Can I hear from Matudio? Matudio, you're here.
Yes po, Dok.
John Cedric. Okay. So, anong naalala mo kay hemoglobin? Anong structure ng hemoglobin? That can be separated once destroyed within the reticuloendothelial system, particularly the spleen. Ano yung pwedeng ma-separate from the structure? Mr. Matudio. Sige, kaya mo yan.
Oxygen ba, Dok? Narinig ko
Ano
po.
yung... Yes, I can hear you. Ano yung sagot mo? Hindi ko narinig yung sagot mo. You can
Diba,
open your... Ha?
oxygen po ba?
Oxygen? Are you sure?
Hindi po, Dok.
Part of its structure, hindi.
Ay, part of structure.
Ano, Mr. Matudio? An idea? Anong structure ang meron sa hemoglobin?
Heme po ba? Heme ba yun? Heme po ba, Dok?
Heme. Okay, the heme and the...
Globin, Doc.
Oh, may heme ka. Ano ba yung isa?
Globin daw po, Dok.
Daw, so ibig sabihin, can you open your cam? Sino yung ano mo dyan? Sino ang dictionary mo dyan? May daw ka eh.
Doc, nagsalita po.
So, ibig sabihin,
po sa injury yan.
wala ko narinig. Si Matudio lang ang narinig ko.
Doc, nagsalita po.
Ay, nagsalita ka ba? Hindi gumalaw yung... Okay. So, there are two structures comprising hemoglobin. So, ito ay, ano lang ha, in general, no, we have the... Yes, we have the heme and then the globin. Ngayon, another question there, what makes the heme? The globin is what? Among the macromolecules, ano ang globin?
Protein po, Dok.
Protein, very good. Globin is a protein. And when you're going to trace for the fate of hemoglobin, your protein can be what? Destroyed, reused, or stored. In in a healthy animal. Official. Ha? Pwedeng ano, Miss Kate? Okay. The major fate for your globin is being reused. Okay, kasi sila yung mga, di ba natapos yun na your Pharma 1? Tapos na kayo ng Pharma 1, tama?
Yes, Doc.
Yes. Your globin is one part of the plasma proteins. Aside from your albumin, tama ba? Albumin is the greatest number in the plasma proteins, tama ba? Recall. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I think you have heard that plasma protein in your Pharma 1 because they serve as your receptors. Tama ba? Pharma 1? Oh, alalahanin nyo, no? Okay, so your globin is being reused since it is a protein. What about the heme? What about the heme? Can heme be destroyed or separated again with the component? Anong naalala yung components ng heme?
Doc, yung bilirubin po.
Oh, agad-agad? Sigurado ka, Miss Kides? Mr. Kides, that bilirubin ay nasa heme na agad? Okay, guys, you need to review your PCO with regards to the disruptions. No? Hindi na natin ulit-ulitin yan. No? Kailangan nyo maintindihan why? Because those standards or those basics will help you to understand why in the intravascular you may see a clinical picture called hemoglobinuria and hemoglobinuria. Now, if you will not know, there is an increased number of hemoglobin in the circulations for hemoglobinemia and hemoglobin in the urine, okay, hemoglobinuria. So that means they are not conjugated. Okay, they are, so it exists. Masyadong rampant yung distractions. That's why hemoglobin are being liberated within the circulation. That's the picture of intravascular. Now, for extravascular, you will notice that there's no hemoglobinemia and hemoglobinuria reflected once evaluated. They are not evident. Why? Because the extravascular hemolysis happens within the arterial or outside the arterial capillary venous or in the macrophages. And particularly, these are found in the extramedullary tissues. Ibig sabihin, doon sa mga spleen. Actually, sa spleen. Okay, sa spleen yan. So, the macrophage are the sole, okay, caretaker of that particular hemolysis. So, they destroy, okay, those erythrocytes. Okay, so macrophage has the capability to attach the erythrocytes and within blood by reaching through non-continuous capillary wall, binding, engulfing, and lysing the erythrocytes. So dito, walang lumalabas because all the byproducts of that lyse RBC can be strictly within the macrophages. That's why you will never see an evidence of hemoglobinemia and hemoglobinuria. Clear? Clear tayo. Naintindihan nyo. I hope naintindihan nyo yan. Napakamadali lang naman siya. Okay, so don't forget that intravascular lysis is within the blood vessels. And for extravascular, lysis of RBC are within a macrophage. That's why in the evidence or clinical picture, hemoglobinemia and hemoglobinuria is not present in extravascular, but evident as manifestations in intravascular hemolysis. Okay, now, for some of the possible conditions leading to intra and extravascular. So, tignan nyo, other term for extravascular is phagocytosis. Okay, so there is an increased phagocytosis of the macrophage because maraming sirang RBC. Okay, yan, pwede yan mangyari yan, no? The extravascular hemolysis, it could take place when they enter the spleen or out from the capillary arterial system. Now, intravascularly, we have bacteria. So, most of these are pathogens, chemicals, some immune-mediated. Ito yung sasabi ko kanina. Externally and internally can be the sources of cause ng intravascular hemolysis. And of course, some hyposmolality. So, dito sa hyposmolality, in terms of, sa osmosis, okay, sa tonicity. Okay, so it affects the tonicity of the plasma, okay, yung fluid. Okay, so in your biochemistry, I think you did an experiment with regards to the behavior of RBC in different fluids. Isotonic, hypertonic and hypotonic solutions. So you will notice there how the RBC react sa isotonic, hypotonic, tsaka hypertonic type of fluids. Okay? So we have a lot here, okay, causing intravascular hemolysis, and this can be read, okay, can be read in your pathologic base of disease. Now, if you want to read individually, pwede nyo naman yung basahin as a standard or as a reference lang. Phenothiazine in your Pharma 1, phenothiazine is an, ano kasi tawag dito? Tranquilizer. Okay, part of the tranquilizer, I think, phenothiazine. Onion, ryegrass, and kale, methylene blue, acetaminophen. Yeah. So all of this can cause hemolysis. Okay, the extent of hemolysis depends on the amount, okay, being or entered, okay, or exposed by the host to that particular entities. Okay. So dito sa bacteria, ito common to, lalo na sa, you have discussed this one in your bacteriology in terms of their pathogenesis, especially if they have these toxins, exotoxins and endotoxins, yung mga exotoxins. No? So, your parasites naman, your babesia kasi in your parasitology, they use the RBC to multiply. Tama ba? So, they destroy. So, yung mga disrupted na RBC na yan, yun. They are part of the lysis RBC. Okay. So, ano yung key point dito? So, ano yung keynote natin dito? You need to understand behind. Okay, you need to understand what could be the possible cause of hemolysis. Okay, kapag sa babesia, balikan mo, ano ba nangyari sa babesia? Anong nangyayari kapag leptospirosis? So, they have toxins. And is this endo or exo, which could have a direct or indirect cause in the blood vessels. Okay? Same with Clostridium perfringens type A and Hemolyticum. Clostridium hemolyticum, the red water. Okay, sa neonatal isoerythrolysis naman, ito, yun yung during the early stages na kinakalaban ng antibody. Okay, akala niya RBC, new RBC, no? Yung mga RBC na yan, antigen, that's why nalalysis siya. So usually yan, sa mga young, okay, sa mga young. Pig, pwedeng makita yan, and dogs, mga young dogs. Incomplete transfusion, so ito naman kapag may reaction, diba? Transfusions, may kakaroon tayong reactions ng antibody-antigen. So that happens, okay? That could really manifest in the immune system. Okay, for extravascular, so RBC, we have the anaplasma, hemobartonella, and pyrethrozoa. They have common characteristic in which they could, what they call this one, invade. Okay, they could invade the RBC. So once the RBC is being invaded, pwede magkaroon ng mga deformities. That's why I think parang anong tawag dito? They are triggered to engulf such entity, like for example, yung RBC na deformed because of abnormalities in their shapes or in sizes. Okay, so yun, pwede silang engulf. For immune-mediated naman, autoimmune hemolytic anemia, lupus, and equine infectious anemia, they trigger to produce abnormal cell, abnormal RBC. Not only RBC, but also with like other blood cells. But definitely in here, there are a lot of numbers ng abnormal size ng RBC. Okay, so yung abnormalities ng RBC produce, yun yung nag-trigger for the macrophage to phagocytose those abnormal cells. So intrinsic erythrocytic defect naman. So if you notice there's a defect, remember, in the different stages of RBC, meron tayong sinusundang mga parang sa cell, ATP, metabolic activity happen inside the RBC that give rise to ATP productions. Okay, So with this, no, those RBC with the nucleus, so if they have still nucleus, that means that the ATP productions are very active, okay, within that area. But then again, paano naman yung mga part where nucleus are not already there? I mean, the nucleus are not uh, being involved or wala na. So basically, this can be found the reticulocytes and the mature erythrocytes and last part of the metalobicite phase. So ang kanilang ginagamit for ATP production to maintain, okay, for the maintenance of the RBC, parang yung apat, okay, di ko pala ito nabanggit sa clinical path ko pala. May apat kasing form yon at the maintenance, okay, of the structure and integrity of the RBC. And if there are a problem in this mechanism, one is the pyruvate kinase deficiency, the PPP, no, part of the mechanism pathway. Okay? So magkakaroon ngayon defect in terms ng kanyang size. Okay? So babalik ulit tayo. Those in with the macrophage to eat that particular one. Porphyria is actually and porphyrin or protoporphyrin pigments or protoporphyrin 2 or 3 are very important and crucial as part of the hemoglobin um, uh, development. Okay, not necessarily a part of the RBC, but it is a crucial part in the or crucial entity as part in the the porphyrin here is the condition. Okay, the porphyrins, those are the pigments producing this condition porphyria. So there's a problem, okay, that during the development, they are affected you can trigger for the phagocytosis. Then for the stomatized deficient, not deficiency, but problem in the size and shape. Okay, so later we will talk about those anisocytes and then yung poikilocytes. Okay, the next slides. And for fragmentation, oh yan. So it happens when there are DAC or the condition is suffering from microangiopathic status or like disseminated intravascular coagulation. So it affects not only other blood cells but also the RBC. So all of this can trigger the hemolysis. Okay, so both intravascular, extravascular, you need to parang common conditions leading to these different types of hemolysis. So at least I give you an idea on why are they are under intravascular and extravascular. Now, supplementation. So you need a reading supplementation with regards to the detailed manifestation. So it's all recorded in the book. Okay, so pwede nyo basahin isa-isa yan. If you have your failures, you can just read about this one. Okay, yung mechanism, bibigyan ka na agad. Okay, if you have a book like this one, now it is already indicated there kung saan nyo pwedeng mabasa. Or if you have the pathologic basis of the Kevin. Okay, marami yun. Napakaganda ng discussion na. So, I think I have already uploaded that one, no? Doon sa general patho nyo pa. So, you can read on the systemic patho part, particularly the hemopoietic system. Okay, you can read all what I've just mentioned with regards to RBC problem and the hemolysis. Okay, so you can read on that. Okay, in the additional reading, please do note you read on some of the inherited hemolytic and then some information regarding this. Which will be included as part of your chapter exams. Sa chapter exams naman. So few, some of that as a part dun sa descriptions of what of these conditions. Okay? So basa-basahin nyo lang, ulit-ulit nyo lang basahin, not necessary ma-memorize nyo, but for you to be familiarized with those one. And also, this is one tawag ito, process of reviewing of what you just parang learned from your previous dito, disciplines, okay, yung mga subject course nyo. Kasi merong identify doon kung pwede. Except yung iba talaga na new entrance or new entry for you, no? Dito sa pathology. Okay, so that's the hemolysis. Any question before we continue to toxic aplastic anemia? So I think I hear none. Okay, now we continue. Toxic aplastic anemia. So this toxic aplastic anemia is generally unresponsive to specific anti-anemia therapy. So ibig sabihin, upon evaluations, you check that the animal is suffering from marami kang binigay na parang medications. Okay, pero ulitin ko, yung medication should be a symptomatic basis. Ibig sabihin, kung anong nakita mo, kaya nga, one of the note, no, you need to know what particular type or primary cause of that anemia. Para alam mo kung saan yung papasok yung interventions with regards to therapy. Okay, so what happened in toxic aplastic anemia? There's a chronic accompanying granulocytopenia and thrombocytopenia. Take note, there's a term granulocytopenia and thrombocytopenia. When you hear about granulo, so that means we're talking about the granulocytes. And cytopenia, cytos the cells, the penia is reduction. So there is a mass reduction of your granulocytes and at the same time mass reduction of your thrombocytes. So if there are mass reduction of these two blood cells together with your RBC, you think of where could be the possible cause of the anemia. Saan yung location kaya? Ano yung affected? So basically, as it mentioned in the presentation, titignan mo ngayon yung status ng bone marrow. So most of the time, the picture of toxic aplastic anemia may show you a cellular or hypoplastic bone marrow. So the term A for the absence and hypoplastic is it does not reach, okay, or incomplete development. So possible, no? So a cellular or hypoplastic bone marrow tissue. So we talk about the bone marrow tissue, we are not talking about the bone. It's more of the bone marrow tissue, supporting the microenvironment, particularly those intended for hematopoiesis. Okay, what are the possible conditions that could lead to a cellularity or hyperplastic status of the bone marrow? So we have the drugs, chemicals, and plants, particularly during, like for example, buntis si mommy or buntis yung dam. Okay, so during that time, the animal might be exposed or has been exposed to some drugs, nagkasakit, nagbigay ka ng drugs, that has an effect to blood forming tissues. So in your pharmacology, can you still remember those drugs that has a problem or that could affect blood forming tissue? Can you still remember in your pharma? Do you have pharma 2 now? Concurrent or tapos nyo na?
Concurrent, Doc.
Concurrent. Uy, lusot kayo. Asa na kayo sa pharma?
Steroids pa lang, Doc.
Steroids. Sige. So wala pa kayo sa wala pa kayo sa mga antibacterials, mga
anti-inflammatory pa lang kami, Doc.
Oo nga, anti-inflammatory kayo, wala pa kayo. Okay, so medyo malaylay pa ng konti. Anyway, so on those, actually, steroids can also be one of the cause, okay, ng possible hemorrhage also. And in excess, pwede magkalod ng blood dyscrasia. But definitely, most of these are na may mga incorporation doon sa antimicrobials. Malalaman nyo yan. Okay, so I leave that. Malalaman nyo in your pharma. Okay, so particularly not the parent drug, but the metabolites. Yan. So, di ba, you have heard about the metabolites, yung active metabolites that affects. Ay, hindi pala kayo lulusot kasi It's been discussed in the Pharma 1, particularly in the biotransformation. Can you still remember biotransformation if I'm telling you biotransformation? Does it ring a bell? Oh, hello? Oh, nakalimutan niyo ng biotransformation. Sa biotransformation kasi there are portion in that kapag magka-problema doon sa enzymes destroying, no? Then the parent drug produces, pag pumasok siya sa system, meron tayong sinasabing mga phase 1, phase 2, no, ng biotransformation. But there's this mechanisms that a prodrug, pwedeng prodrug or yung parent drug, ay magkaroon siya ng active metabolite. It's some the active metabolites that can deposited or that can be deposited in the bone marrow or somewhere in the bone or in the tissue forming cells or yung blood forming cells, doon sa rin yan, tissue forming na supporting hematopoiesis, kapag nandun yung mga active metabolites that this can cause or this could disrupt, okay? They could disrupt the normal production of blood cells. Ayan. Kaya nagkakaroon siya ng mga anemia. So drugs, chemicals, medyo marami tayong chemicals, and some plants. So some plants kasi, most of the time yung mga nakakain accidentally in the wild. Okay, that's why in your toxicology, do you have your toxicology now or last sem?
Doc, next sem pa po ata yun.
Next sem. Okay, so at least, okay. In your toxicology, you will meet on those plant toxins that could also lead to hemorrhage. Ayan, that could lead to anemia. Okay, sa mga affecting especially the bone marrow. Okay. During development, yan. Pwedeng during development or as the animal is growing. Yan. So, irradiation. So, always remember that radiations, mga UV rays, or let's say yung mga radiations from X-rays, so they love to destroy actively dividing cells. That's why nagkakaroon ng acellularity kapag medyo bata and then exposed to some radiations, then it will kill or it will hamper, okay, that or disruptions of the actively dividing cells. Okay, not only in the bone marrow, but all of the parts of the body which are in an active performing ng development. So all of this can be affected. Cytotoxic T cells o antibiotic o pasok ang immune problem. Okay, eating. Okay, ito yung mga hindi nila some of the cytotoxic T cells try to destroy yung mga developing cells. And of course, infectious agents which focus on the actively dividing cells. That's the filae leukemia virus as an example. So if this happen, no, medyo greater to kasi what the focus of the problem here is the bone marrow tissue. Okay, so kung wala yung bone marrow tissue, then there will be no parang complete development or let's say not tawag dito yung greatest formation ng hematopoiesis can be affected. So we are not only talking about anemia here but also with the other type of blood cells. Okay? So yan yung mga problem natin sa toxic anemia. Now, the last one, meron pa pala. Your myeloptysic anemia naman, so same, no? It could also happen in the bone marrow. So there's a destruction or crowding out of hematopoietic tissues by myelosclerosis, diffuse granulomatous oxymyelitis, and metastatic tumors. In short, these conditions can be acquired, okay, while the animal is alive, okay, na konting yun na pabago pagdating sa toxic anemia. Sa toxic anemia kasi may acellularity. So, pwedeng during the development. But then, they are not limited to on that development. So, habang the animal is growing, kasi dun nagiging active the formations that it could still very prone, okay, to acellularity and hypoplastic disorder. Now, for myeloptysic anemia naman, so during life, no, So if there are chances that the animal might suffer from fracture or let's say other conditions affecting the bone, not necessarily the bone marrow, so pwedeng direct or indirect conditions affecting the marrow. Okay, so yon, pwedeng the bone. Kaya nga osteomyelitis can be one. Some metastatic tumors that may or may not originate within the bone marrow or in the bone. Okay, so pwede yan. Diffuse granulomatous conditions, osteosclerosis, so that's affecting the bone itself. Myelofibrosis, that means that the animal might be exposed to some conditions, chronic conditions that challenge, okay, the okay, na nagkaroon ng fibrotic conditions. Kasi yung fibrosis, ito is a chronic picture, okay, of an active parang conditions, active disease. So may scarring na nangyayari. So wala na nakikita yung regeneration, but because of an intense exposure to extended conditions, continuous conditions, then fibrosis ang nagkaroon ng chance for the repair process. Okay, so the bone marrow is replaced by abnormal proliferation of cells. So that is the difference between myelopathic naman when it comes or when you compare the toxic aplastic anemia. Okay, so there is abnormal proliferations of cells. So that means there are some liberated cells in the circulations that should not be there. And in terms of sizes and test or blood test. Okay, wet mouth or dry mouth. Okay, ng mga blood cells nyo. Okay, so usually this caused by myeloproliferative disorders, usually accompanied by leukocytosis and leukemic blood picture. So take note, the myelopathic anemia is not only affecting the RBC but all of the cells within the bone marrow. Okay, so yun yung nakikita. That's why in a picture, you have the leukemic blood picture. And leukemia, when you think about leukemia, it is more of yung parang connotations of blood cancer or cancer of the blood. Okay, you can see there a lot of variation in terms of blood cells. You can see there RBC, young or premature, and impaired size of granulocytes, lymphocytes, etc. So that's the picture. That's why leukocytosis is one of the parang manifestations when you see about leukemic blood pictures. Pero not limited only to leukocyte, but also you can find there mga different RBC yung lineage. Kasi hindi na siya normal. So there's no control in the proliferation of blood cells. Last one in terms of etiology is the nutritional deficiency. So for nutritional deficiency, always remember to go back to your nutrition. What are the possible, what are the important nutrition sustaining hematopoiesis? So we have identified here three, the minerals, the vitamins, and proteins. I told you about the proteins a while ago. Okay, so we have there the globin, okay, very important and as part of the hemoglobin production. Okay, so mineral, particularly of your, what is Fe? What is Fe?
Iron, Doc.
Okay,
Iron.
your iron. Yan, very good. So iron. What about CO? Yes, Miss Bulanadi. CO. Bulanadi, I see you raise your hand.
Ay, nawindot ko, Doc. Carbon dioxide po yung CO, Doc. Sorry.
Oh, Janine.
Cobalt po, Doc.
Ha?
Cobalt.
Cobalt. Okay, so what about CU?
Copper, Doc.
Copper po, Doc.
Oh, copper. So these are the three, okay, micro minerals important for the development of RBC and hemoglobin. So dalawa sila, importante yan. Kasi yung cobalt and coenzyme or cofactor, alam mo na to. For copper and iron, both the erythrocyte and hemoglobin. Okay. So another one is vitamin deficiency. Okay, so mga vitamins important is your folic acid, B complex, particularly, ilan yung B complex alam niyo dyan? Napaka-importante yung mga B complex. Ano yung mga yon? Sige, you review what are the B complex. Kasi those B complex, once deficient, magkakaroon tayo ng mga dito, vitamin deficiency which could lead to megalo or micro anemia. Okay, and of course, niacin. So, very important yan, especially the development. That's why, kapag narinig nyo kung ano, folic acid, sabi dito, the vitamin is important for the productions of RBC at the same time your hemoglobin ay isang folic acid. Now, you think, pagdating nyo ng farm, meron tayo itong drug na to, which has the focus on the folic acid, mga folic acid na yan. So, kapag maroon, pwede kayong think or you can force through that if there's intense, okay, intake of these chemicals, okay, yung chemical na to, chemical substance, yung drugs na to, it could affect, okay, yung blood synthesis, particularly if you're erythrocytes. Okay, protein deficiency, okay, your hemoglobin. Ayan, particularly your globin. So, meron tayong sakit. Okay. So, that is parang deficient in the globin. Okay, so meron yan. May mga animals that are prone to thalassemia, and particularly this affects because of the deficient in the protein. Okay, constituents. Okay, so the nutrition deficiency depends on the, hindi ba tayo lumabas? Depends on the different vitamins or minerals or nutritional deficiencies. Okay? Na makikita. Okay, so this is just a reading assignment. Yan. Pag may time kayo, basa-basahin nyo yan, no? So, about immune-mediated disorders, infectious disorders, itong mga to, across. It will go across dun sa the different type of anemia. Okay, bacterial agents, viral agents, acquired inherited metabolic disorders. Okay, it will give you the idea across the different types of anemia based on the etiology. Okay, babasa. And then, of course, nandun lahat yan kay pathologic base of disease ni McCavey. Nandun lahat yan, kompleto with pictures. Okay, ba? If you have the, ano ba to, yung kulay itim, I think that's 6th edition yata yun. Mas marami siyang entry doon. Okay. And then, of course, yung mababasa dito, hindi ko naman nasasalid to sa, sa major, dito sa quiz, no, it will be incorporated or included in the major exam. Okay, sa major exam ko to, include. Okay, so any clarifications with regards to the type of anemia based on etiology? So we have the hemorrhagic, hemolytic, aplastic, myeloproliferative, and nutritional deficiency. So there are 5. Okay, I hope you still remember that. Now, any questions or clarifications? We still have siguro 30 minutes. Okay, kasi 11:20 na. So, kung matatapos ko tong anemia based on cell size, so ito yung sinasabi ko kanina in terms of the abnormalities in size and abnormalities in shapes. Okay, so I think I hear none. So, let me continue our discussion. As we proceed to the different manifestations or abnormalities in RBC, today we will talk about anemia based on cell size. So, the first one is based on etiology. Now, for the cell size, we have here normocytic anemia, microcytic anemia, and macrocytic anemia. So definitely, 2 of these, the microcytic and macrocytic anemia is almost described. So parang palagi yung na-describe as not abnormalities. But then again, Doc, why is it there? Meron tayong tinatawag normocytic anemia. So normal size. So what happened just here is that medyo, if you, like for example, ito yung counterpart ng polycythemia in which yung relative. Okay, yung relative polycythemia, di ba doon, still the same yung number ng RBC, but because of dehydration sa plasma, no, nagkakaroon tayo ng viscosity of the blood that could reflect into a erythrocytosis. Ang nangyari naman sa normocytic anemia, still, RBCs naman, but because of large amount of fluid, okay, parang dispersing, okay, yung isang compartment, yung RBC, that will look like an anemia. Okay, so nagkaroon tayo ng normocytic anemia. But the microcytic and macrocytic are different because it affects, okay, the size and shapes of the cell. Okay, so if you will notice, this is an average mammalian red cells which shows you an approximately 7 microns in diameter sa macrocyte at saka microcyte. So ito yung tsura niya. Macrocytes are also called the megaloblasts. Okay, yung mga megalocyte. Yung term, megalocyte. Kaya yung mga megaloblast kasi yung mga bata or premature, large premature cells. Okay? If the animal is suffering from a certain conditions causing a megaloblastic or megaloblast picture of cells in the circulation, particularly RBC. Okay, so another is based on hemoglobin content of red cells. So that is the chromatia. Okay, ito yung concentration of hemoglobin. Okay, within the erythrocyte together with the oxygenations. Okay, kapag may oxygenation yan. So ito yung concentrations. So there is normochromic anemia, normal hemoglobin concentrations, and the hypochromic anemia in which there is a low hemoglobin concentrations. Now, if you will notice, wala tayong hyperchromic anemia because hindi parang it's so impossible to have a hyperchromic. Okay, yung hyperchromic anemia. Kasi parang it follows lang doon sa meron tayong saturations lang. Okay, where there is a saturation level of hemoglobin to an oxygenation. Okay, so we have two pictures here, the normal and the hypochromic. Chromic anemia as more of the picture of parang mas serious, okay, type of anemia. Okay, so normally, the value of the MCH or the mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration, this is a evaluation. Okay, this is an erythrogram evaluation. Okay, in your laboratory examinations. That an MCH sheet to give you a good hemoglobin content or hemoglobin concentration should be 33%. So red cell populations with values below the 33% or 1/3, okay, of the RBC is called hypochromic. Okay, so that is based on content of red cells. Now, for based on reactions, we have the regenerative and the non-regenerative. When we talk about regenerative anemia, the bone marrow still has the capability to replace, okay, those destroyed red blood cells. And the manifestations are an evidence of a regenerative anemia or polychromasia and reticulocytosis. So polychromasia, it's a condition in which you can see a very yung stained, okay, active reactions in cells, okay, especially yung mga cells nasa mga immature or immature cells or developing cells in the blood smear. Reticulocytosis is a cell, it's still an abnormal cell, abnormal immature cells in the circulation. So these are the two picture of giving you an idea that the animal still capable, okay, to replenish the red blood cells destroyed. So other findings are anisocytosis or your different sizes, particularly seen sa mga immature cells. The whole jolly bodies as a remnant, okay, of the yung within the cell, and some nucleated RBC. Because nucleated RBC are seen only in immature one. Okay, take note that regenerative anemia should be at a certain state. So, kapag yung continuous na regenerative anemia, it could lead to non-regenerative because the term exhaustion. Meron tayong term na exhaustion. Okay, so that means that the bone marrow cannot able to perform because of the continuous, okay, exposure to that possible conditions. Okay, na yung generations can be affected. Okay, so yun. So a picture of reactive bone marrow, ito yung blood smear natin. Now, you will notice there some of the larger diameter size. Okay? So, meron kayong mga makikitang reticulocytes. Okay? May mga staining kasi may specific staining dyan. Blood cells natin na meron pa rin kayong nakikitang mga party site, okay, mga nucleosides, mga polychromatophilic, okay, yung chromatophilic, yung mga chromatin granules within, ayan, this is called the basophilic stippling, ayan. So, and then of course, your reticulocytes. So, this polychromatophilic staining or yung basophilic stippling, mga reticulocytes, and mga some immature cells are picture of a regenerative type of anemia. Okay, now, for the non-regenerative anemia. Sabi ko kanina, a regenerative anemia can have a limit in which the bone marrow can still regenerate for and replenish those destroyed. But then again, if the cause is continued, okay, or continuous exposure to that, let's say chemical, might lead to incapability or exhaustion of the bone marrow to replenish or to react or to adapt or compensate for the distracted RBC. Okay, so makakompromise. Okay, there will be compromising of the bone marrow tissue activity. So the mechanisms behind the non-regenerative anemia can be due to chronic disorders, which will lead to iron sequestration in macrophages. So you have heard about those RBC being engulfed, or sa hemolytic anemia, no? Being engulfed by macrophages in which iron are not liberated but will remain within the macrophage. Kasi the fate of iron are stored, reused, or stored or reused. They are not excreted out. Okay, they are reused. That's why yung iron ay sinusupplement. Usually sinusupplement yan. Okay, shorter erythrocyte survival time. So, papasok dito ngayon sa hemolysis or yung hemolytic type of anemia cause and impaired marrow response to anemia. So, we can adopt the pathophysiology of the myeloprolific and your aplastic, okay, type of anemia. So these are the three general mechanisms that could implicate non-regenerative anemia, lalo na if the animal is exposed to a lot of these conditions. So it was indicated in our previous slides that some of the examples that could lead to aplastic or the myeloprolific, okay, drugs, pathogens. So if the animal is experiencing or suffering from these conditions, then the animal might progress to this kind of reactions. Okay, so some of the causes identified here are decreased erythropoietin. So let's say affected yung kidney. Okay, if there is endocrine dysfunction, there's hypothyroidism that might affect the kidney. Okay, and hypoadrenocorticism. Okay, so this could affect directly, indirectly the activity of the kidney. Okay, chronic diseases like inflammation, neoplasia, cytotoxic marrow damage, which actually directly affecting the bone marrow environment, and immune-mediated cytotoxicity because of pure red blood cell aplasia or the immune-mediated antibody reactions yung nagkakaroon ng problema. So I have mentioned about myeloprolific diseases kapag may mga leukemia. Ayan. Nuclear diffusion dysfunctions, particularly during the active development for the active incorporation of different minerals at the same time structures of hemoglobin and erythrocytes. So we have, it was mentioned here, di ko lang binanggit kanina, that your sulfonamide drugs, okay, especially the folic acid yan, yung mga sulfonamide, the nuclear divisions, the protein divisions, methoxytrate therapy, and the folic acid deficiency, and vitamin B12 deficiency. B12 is your cyanocobalamin. So, without cyanocobalamin and the division in the cobalt, so hindi magkakaroon na complete usage ng cyanocobalamin because the cobalt is one of the coenzymes and cofactor for the B12 parang complete use. Okay. Another subdermal erythroid maturation. So this includes due to exposure to some viruses or erythroleukemia, and particularly affecting the heme synthesis. So heme, the most important component of the heme is ferrous, okay, yung iron. So if in the heme synthesis, kasi meron tayong I think 5 steps yon. So kapag may lead poisoning, chloramphenicol. So yung chloramphenicol in human and in animals are already banned. Okay, because it will cause blood dyscrasia. It has this metabolite pala, yung active metabolite that causes blood dyscrasia. And of course, the microcytic iron deficiency because of the iron deficient. So your iron, the ferrous are incorporated firmly in the heme productions and in the erythrocyte activity. So yun, that's why if there is deficient iron, it will affect the hemoglobin concentration at the same time the size, okay, of the erythrocyte. Kaya magkakaroon tayo ng microcytic hypochromic type of anemia. Okay, so you can reflect the microcytic because of the iron deficient as part in the incorporation of erythrocyte development, and of course hypochromic because in the heme problem because of iron deficiency, kulang kasi kailangan yon, meron tayong I think may alpha and beta doon okay, for the heme development sa structure nila. So ang tawag sa kanila in terms of the etiology, kung we will name that morphologically, no, microcytic hypochromic anemia. Okay, that is due to iron deficiency. Okay, so in general, anemia can cause pulmonary effects, cardiovascular defects or effects, hemodynamic effects, and physical being. So pulmonary effects, since oxygenation is affected, the lung can also be affected because the lung, we all know that this is the part or the tissue that helps in the oxygenation process, so it will double time. So, kasi may compensatory mechanism na signals yan, no? Same with the cardiovascular effects. So, you have heard about arrhythmia, okay, dun sa earlier stages natin because of the low viscosity of the blood, or there's a high viscosity of the blood. So, masyadong ma-confirm yung activity naman ng heart. So, that could lead to other deficiencies originating from this anemia. It could produce another disease affecting the cardiovascular system. Hemodynamic effects, syempre, we have heard about the shock, or we have heard about the IC, so it will affect, okay, if there is anemia. And then, of course, physical being, which can be manifested dun sa activity, okay, ng animal. So, nangihina, matamlay, may cyanosis. So, those are some of the physical being that can be, or physical effects of anemia to an animal. Okay, so as what I've told you previously, no, all of the type of anemia can go in hand, so it can overlap and could lead you to a general picture. Okay, that relatively differentiate that through regenerative or non-regenerative. So ito lang yung important. This is actually lifted from the book of McDavid sa physiologic pathologic basis, pathologic animal diseases, okay? Sa pathologic basis of diseases. So ito yung mga hallmarks ng regenerative and non-regenerative. Okay, so I have mentioned this one a while ago. And then, ito na yung hemorrhage and hemolysis for the type based on theology. Okay, so ganyan lang yung kanyang parang picture of an anemia. Okay, so any clarification? Sign yun yan. So ito na lang ay pasada with regards to the different abnormalities in shapes. Ayan, so I have introduced to you, no, a part of the abnormalities in shapes and sizes, no. Those term for abnormalities in shapes for the poikilocytosis. So all of these, acanto, dacryo, codo, leptos, schizocyte, treponus are called poikilocytes. Kasi they have variable shape. But particularly kung ano yung nakita yung different types ng shape na meron sila or may mga distinct characteristics, they are named as to this kind of characteristics. So, acanthocytes with spicules, the cryocytes, they are called dacry because they resemble a teardrop. Podocyte, para siyang target cell or bullseye. Okay, leptocytes, thin cells, schizocytes, fragmented cells, and drepanocytes as a sickle cell. Okay, so some pictures. So you have the normal blood cells here, and then the normals called dystocytes or the discocytes. So ito yung some inclusions lang in terms of the normal characteristic of the blood cells. So both they're flat, irregular shaped RBCs, the camellids are oval, and cervix have sickle-shaped RBCs. In some mammalian, sickle shape is already abnormal, and that connotes for some serious problem. But in cervix, sa mga cervidae natin, they have this normal shape, sickle cell. Okay, yung C shape. Okay, one feature of RBC, that's why you can see here some differences. They could change in the shape, no? Is the term deformability. This deformability is very important, especially when they move out, okay, or transcend a certain move through microvasculature. That's why in the inflammations, okay, so RBC, no, isa sa mga frequent cardinal signs dito, yung hypolemia or erythema, okay, dun sa area. Okay, so magkakaroon tayo ng high volume of RBC. These RBC move because of the structures of their cell membranes of the deformability. Ito yung process. So, the interaction between the cell membrane, cytoskeleton, and intracellular contents. So, ito yung flexibility of RBC to some extent. Okay. Now, I have mentioned about this one, the reaction of RBC to different fluid. So, please remember na in your clinical years, if you are told to give fluids or yung sinasabi nating mga fluid therapy, you need first to seek for advice or please know first the status of the animal, the dehydration or the hydration status of the animal. Be sure that the animal might have this kind of, let's say, deficient constituent in their blood, let's say electrolyte. Kasi dun sa fluid therapy, we're not only talking about the fluid that you will give, but also some of the solutes content, okay, doon sa fluid natin. And those very reactive in terms of RBC dun sa blood. Okay, for isotonic solutions, okay lang because the fluid that will be given or the behavior of the RBC within this kind of fluid isotonic is good. So, ibig sabihin, they can thrive, so they don't have any changes in sizes. They can do their function properly. But then again, if there is a hypertonic solution, ibig sabihin, the tonicity, okay, the tonicity or the concentration of will happen, ibig sabihin, the movement of fluid. Diba meron tayong intracellular fluid, extracellular fluid. So what happened here is that the high concentrations will be the one that depicts the movement from lower to high concentration. That's why there is a crenation. Nagkakaroon ng, so mag-shrink. So ganito yung magiging itsura. So ito yung mga titignan nyo once you give your therapy. And same with the hypotonic solution naman. So since the intracellular fluid is more concentrated than the outside. So let's say masyadong marami kang lalagay na fluid or hypotonic solutions in the environment that will depict the different movement, the negative movement of fluid from the outside to the inside, which will lead to this kind of bulging. Okay, so nag-swell yung cells natin. So both of these could disrupt or could destroy the cell. Okay, so dapat yan yung mga tatandaan nyo. Okay, so these are some examples of shapes that I've shown you. Yung term acanthocyte, may spicule siya. the cryopsytes, the pure drop cell, the podocytes, which means cells, yan. Some leptocytes here included, the cryopsytes here, podocytes. Okay, this is a mixed one. Another is your schizocytes of fragmentations, echinocytes, micronations, yan. And then your drepanocytes or sickle cell, yan. So all of these can depict also abnormalities or conditions behind. Pwede mga hemangiosarcoma, problem in the metabolism. You have that in the, I think that's included in your notes. Okay, we just need to read on that. Okay, so another abnormal shape is the elliptocytosis, in which this impairs, it reflects membrane defect and ill-defined mechanism. So in terms of the development of the cell membrane kanina, no? Elliptocytosis seems like a long, parang elongated red blood cells. For spherocytosis naman, so I've shown you about this one, okay, more of the oval shape. Pero pagdating nyo doon sa ibang animal that has oval shape na normal sa kanila, do not. Okay? So, you need to think twice if this is spherocytes or not. Okay, so if you see spherocytes in the circulations, then that means that the conditions might have accelerated in cell aging, membrane depletion, and immunohemolytic anemia. Now, if you will notice, so this all reflects on the hemolytic anemia that I've mentioned a while ago. Okay, this is the spherocytes. Some echinocytes here, so may konting crenation niya, but definitely hindi pa siya maging echinocytes, so parang bilog-bilog pa rin siya, but more of the spherocytes. That's the poikilocytes, and I think there are a lot more mentioned in the LRP, so you need to read on that. For the sizes naman, so the term anisocytosis, actually, during my board exam, lumabas yung term. Ang question lang, what do we call those RBC that varies in sizes? And unfortunately, hindi ko siya nakuha. So, baliktad yung sagot ko. Hanggang ngayon, hindi ko na makalimutan yung anisocytosis and poikilocytes. So, when you think of shape, that's poi. That's with letter P. For if you think of variation size, that is with S, then anisocytosis. So, yun na lang yung reference ko. Okay, di ba? So, I hope that can help you, no, in memorizing the two. Okay, so in anisocytosis, this variation in the diameter. So that means in the shape. In the size. Okay? So occurrence, so parang binanggit ko kanina, if there's a microcytic, then actually that is a picture of anisocytosis, especially if there's a diode deficiency or reticulocytosis. Okay, so increase of these conditions, which may be present in regenerative anemia. So I have also mentioned this one as a good reactions in the regenerative type of anemia. But always remember na meron tayong limit, okay, for the regenerative capacity of the bone marrow. So greater in normal cattle than in other domestic animals. So in terms of animal, okay, variations, no? Okay, so normal lang sa cattle. So anisocytosis without polychromation may be seen in horses with intense regenerative anemia. Oh, by the way, in horses, you cannot see reticulocytes. Okay, so yung horse na wala kang makikita ng reticulocytes in their blood. So this just few picture of your anisocytosis. Ayan. Okay, so you just read on this one. Okay, and then list the morphological difference of RBC. I've mentioned this one previously pa. Basa-basa nyo to. You can answer this in your from your histo. I think histo and physio. Okay? So, yan. Yung mga morphological differences na ng different RBCs ng different animal to. By the way, some of these are mentioned in this topics, but the other are not yet shown. Particularly, some avians have different picture with regards to RBCs. Okay, now we have erythrocyte inclusions as an abnormal or normal, okay, constituent of the erythrocytes, because there are some inclusions that are pathogenic, okay, and some are non-pathogenic. Incorporated na dito para you have an idea in terms why these RBC are being destroyed, okay, dun sa under ng hemolysis, no? So, linagay ko na siya. Okay, so The appearance, composition, and associated physiology of the inclusion are specific for each type of inclusions. So if those inclusions are pathogenic, then meron tayong mga examples of pathogenic inclusions. Some are non-pathogenic naman. We have examples of non-pathogenic inclusions. So what you see in the picture is a peripheral blood smear appearing to have a Heinz body, okay, which is a clump of precipitated hemoglobin. So this is a non-pathogenic yan. So usually, there's advanced or hindi naman. Okay, usually visualized by right stain smear or new methylene blue or brilliant crescent blue and Prussian blue. Now, think of those different stain here reflecting a specific type of cell, okay, seen as part of the erythrocyte inclusions. So this just examples of erythrocyte inclusions. So polychromatophilic metarubicytes, okay, as part of the basophilic stippling, no? Erythrocyte containing nuclear fragments, mitotic rubricytes, ito yung mitotic fragments or mitotic actively developing or dividing cells. The hollow jolly body is non-pathogenic to. Yan. The Heinz body, yan. Yan. So, just be familiarized. And you read on this, marami tayong notes na pwede kayong magbasa with yung pwedeng possible conditions behind. It could be related to a pathogens or non-pathogenic. Yung iba naman as remnant during the development. Okay, so this just few pictures showing you a basophilic stippling as one picture of a regenerative type of anemia. And so pag infectious or pathogenic, yan. So I think you are familiar with this one, your parasitology, particularly in the ano kasi yun? Protozoology. So you have this one. So these are the different parasites that destroy the RBC during their life stages. Yan. Other naman may affect, okay, that will leave an abnormal blood cell in size or in shape. Okay, so yan yung mga picture, anaplasma marginale and anaplasma centrale. So usually mga marginale, ayan. So you have also the anaplasma ovis, which is found in the center. Okay, so ito yung mga different parasites. So there's also artifact precipitated staining, which can give you parang differentials in terms of viewing that under the microscope. And platelet overlying and erythrocyte. Okay, this is the platelet. These are the platelets here. Okay, so I think that's all for RBC, and we will continue our discussion in blood cells next meeting by Wednesday. I guess parang feeling ko din tayo makapag-meet sa Wednesday because I have a test positive. Basta you wait for my post na lang for our discussions. So, any clarifications? Questions? At least we have 10 minutes. Nandiyan ba kayo? Can you still hear me?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. So, any clarifications or have you, yes, Miss Paladan. Or pwede kayo mag-share na experiences with regards if you have already parang experience mga transient anemia, kung ano naramdaman, kasi di ba in the effects of anemia, physical being, cardiovascular, pulmonary, di ba yun yung mga possible manifestations or affecting conditions if the animal is suffering from anemia. Actually, the animal and human can have parang same or similar manifestations of anemia. So, any question?
Doc,
Oh, yes,
pwede pong pa-upload ng PPT, Doc.
Yeah, I will upload the PPT. Kaya lang yun, isang book kasi yun ang buong buo. Anyway, sige, i-upload ko na. So, hindi ko naman para makita nyo. May mga activity in between. So, if you have time, then you can do. Okay, in between na lang. Okay? Kasi naka-incorporate sana doon per ano yun, per discussions para but definitely, so since ganito naman tayo, I might upload the full. Okay? Madami yun. 200 plus kasi yun. Okay, so you have naman the ano, LRP naman. So, the informations on that, at saka ito, yan. May mga similar and then may mga additionals na naka. Okay, so ibibigay ko yun. Any more? So, kung wala na, okay, let's call it a day. So, thank you very much. At least nandiyan kayo when I ask you to go online. And thank you very much. And sorry for sa mga interruptions. And then please, habaan yung piso niyo because these next few days and few weeks, again, medyo nakikita niyo yung kalendaryo ko. Ayan, punong-puno po siya. Ayan. Ayan, so, kung magko-call ako sa inyo, sana you are available in our time. Ayan, para kahit paano, malilesen natin o move forward tayo. So, if you don't have questions anymore, thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you listen. I hope you learn something, at least 2, 3, or 4 words for this day. At least malaki na yon. Okay, so thank you very much. So, wala kang clarifications. So, if you have clarifications, we can meet again naman and then you can address that. And for the groupings and their activities, I will just post that in the classroom. So, thank you very much for today.